Kyle Busch just got knocked out of the playoffs in the round of 12, not making it to the round of 8. Now, last year, he did a little bit worse than that. But overall, was season one with RCR a good season or not? We'll look at it from both Kyle Busch's perspective, and we'll also look at it from RCR's perspective. All that and more here on Let's Talk About It with Kyle Busch. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Ryan Peters. Thank you for tuning to Stuck in the Catch Fence. Before we started, I want to let you know we are right there at our goal of reaching 500 subscribers. So thank you guys so much for joining in, and hopefully you've been entertained. You got the type of information you've been looking for, and you've been just completely awesome in the community that we've built here, just starting this year at Stuck in the Catch Fence. So thank you very much. But there's no mistake about it. I'm a Kyle Busch fan. So it's pretty easy for me to want to talk about my favorite driver of all time when it comes to Kyle Busch. Now, let's set the stage of what happened to get to where we are with Kyle Busch at this point. Last year, with Joe Gibbs Racing, it was well known that Kyle Busch's contract was coming to an end. Later in the year, we found out that Mars Chocolate, the M&M's car, would no longer be because Mars was leaving the NASCAR scene, and that Kyle Busch was losing his primary sponsorship, or, well, more importantly, his primary funding. So things seem to be, just normal at the beginning when it comes to contract talks. And then it got rockier and rockier. And then all of a sudden, there was a real chance that Kyle Busch was going to leave. Now, a lot of people didn't believe that was going to happen. He's the most famous and statistically the best Toyota driver of all time, especially the most accomplished. And that what seemed to be rumors became a reality. Later in the year, Kyle Busch, which was a very bad year in 2022 by Kyle Busch standards, really, really struggled. And then finally, right around September, announced that he was going to be moving to RCR just before the Talladega race. So going to RCR initially from this Kyle Busch fan was a downgrade. I talked previously after losing Tyler Reddick that I thought RCR might make the way of Chip Ganassi and get out of NASCAR. I did not think that they would be in play for Kyle Busch because Richard Childress and Kyle Busch don't have a great history previously as well. They're both very strong-headed, and where they are at this point in both of their career really didn't seem like a marriage that was great. And more importantly, it didn't seem like something Kyle Busch would want to step into, a place that hasn't won a championship in a very, very long time, ever since the 3 car with Dale Earnhardt previously in it. So now that Kyle Busch is knocked out of the playoffs, not that his season is done, but I think it's fair to do a Rowdy review and look at, was this season a success for both Richard Childress Racing in terms of employing Kyle Busch, and also for Kyle Busch moving on to the bow tie and moving to Richard Childress Racing. So the first thing I want to look at is the last year with Kyle Busch at Joe Gibbs Racing. And I have those statistics. Kyle last year had 1 win. That's it. He also had an average finish of 16th place. He had 8 top 5s. His average start was 14th. He had 17 top 10s and then 6 DNFs. So that is his last season at Joe Gibbs. Moving to this season, he had 3 wins so far. Still have 4 races left. 16 top 10s, 9 top 5s, 6 DNFs, an average start of 12th, and an average finish of 14.5. So his average finish has improved by 2 positions. His average start has improved by 2 positions. He has 2 more wins and also a more top 5s and top 10s with still 4 races to go. The biggest difference is quite considerably less laps ran up front, laps led 600 last year versus 200 this year. So statistically, when you look at this, I mean, I think the first thing you would say was, yeah, I mean, this was a successful year for Kyle Busch. To me, that's kind of where I give pause. And I have to look at this from a recent and a long-term perspective. The type of season that Kyle Busch had this year, for most drivers, would be a successful season. You got 3 wins. It was on a multitude of different tracks: Fontana, WWT, and at Talladega. You were fast at the road courses. So, I mean, wherever they statistically put out different tracks, I mean, or wherever they put there was different types of tracks, he did well. Definitely improved of what was, in my mind, easily better equipment at Joe Gibbs Racing compared to Richard Childress Racing. But this isn't the statistics that I believe the old Kyle Busch would find successful. To me, the only thing successful for a season for Kyle Busch is making it to the championship 4. Now, to be honest with you, if you would have told me that, he would have made it to the final 12 his first year at RCR last year, I probably would say that's a pretty good improvement from what he has been doing recently and what RCR has been doing recently as well. I think the number one thing that is true is that the marriage between RCR and Kyle Busch is working. I think that Randall Burnett is a good crew chief for him. I think that they understand each other very, very well. Kyle has been very vocal on things that need to change and that how the team is willing to change, listening to him. Richard Childress has been listening to Kyle Busch. And I think the marriage, number one, between the team has worked. And there's a lot of people that didn't know if that would work. I mean, I have a video and I'll put it at the end if you want to watch it that says, is the marriage between Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing working? That's when they were going through a law, and we were wondering these different types of things there for a while, and then he pretty much won like a week or two later. But I did have that wondering at time, was it going to work? I think we definitively after 1 year can say it's working. But again, back to the season for Kyle Busch, I think Kyle is probably happy with what happened this year. I think you've heard him be very transparent compared to his racing style. I think that he is used to being able to get more from a car than what he's been able to get from the car at RCR, the number 8. And that discussion is it based upon the car itself, the 8 car, or is it based upon the next gen car? Kyle's mentioned he's got to change his racing style. Is that because of the next gen car? Or is it because the RCR car is not nearly as good as the JGR car? Those are things that we could have a discussion for a different day. But I think overall, based upon the here and now, this year was a success for both parties. The marriage worked. Kyle got better than he was at JGR the last year, and Richard Childress Racing reached out and got a driver that Austin Dillon tried to pull in and had an opportunity to make it to the round of 8. Just end up missing it because of some incidents in practice and qualifying. The biggest thing is they got to cut down on the DNFs. But overall, Kyle Busch is not a driver when it comes to the grand scheme of things that should be finishing in the round of 12. I've been very vocal on Chase Elliott. People anointed Chase Elliott as the next best coming driver in the entire motorsport. And I said he's not the best driver at his own team. When's the last time the best driver didn't make the playoffs? Let alone, I'm more concerned my driver didn't make it to the round of 8. So if I'm going to be critical to Chase Elliott and his overall potential, and Chase Elliott's in his prime. I mean, Kyle Busch is on the outside of his prime, watching the twilight of his years. He still may have, 7, 8 years left, the way that he talks about things, but he's certainly not in his prime. I think just watching him on Sundays will prove, or hell, even worse, on Saturdays, wrecking and qualifying in practice, is showing that he's not in his prime. He can still win. He can still get a championship. He could John Elway his career and still do really, really big things. But the days of Kyle Busch dominance, I think, are probably over. The drivers are much better. The teams are much better. Kyle Busch is not as good as he once was. I think those are all fair things to say. But when we look at the legacy of Kyle Busch, it's measured in championships and wins. 3 wins, not bad. But for somebody with 60 some wins, he's chasing the 85 of Dale Earnhardt. He said that. He's got to have more than 3 wins in seasons if he realistically wants to get to Dale Earnhardt. I mean, technically, 7 years left. Hypothetically, we could say that 3 wins, 21. He'll be very, very close. But I think in Kyle Busch's mind, he thinks he's got to have 4 or 5 wins a year consistently. And that's very, very hard in today's motorsports, as evidenced by all the drivers now capable of winning on any given Sunday. So for the short term, yes, I thought this year was a successful season. It's probably better than what I thought it was going to be initially whenever I heard the 8 was going to be driven by Kyle Busch. I never thought I'd ever say those words. For the legacy of Kyle Busch, no. No, I think that Kyle Busch himself would say this is not what he planned 3 years ago, 4 years ago. He still feels he should be competing for championships, and I still believe he's that talented that he should. Now look at it from an RCR perspective. Was this year a good year? You lose possibly one of the best prospects in the sport in Tyler Reddick to Toyota. Okay. That automatically was a huge negative. And now we look at it. Tyler Reddick is in the round of 8 and has a chance to get to the championship 4. I'm not sure anybody would be shocked if he wasn't, considering that they're going to a 1.5 miles and also going to Homestead, Miami. 2 tracks he does really well at. 2 tracks that 2311's done really well at. So at the beginning of that, as desperate as RCR could have been, he actually, kind of like Kyle Busch, looked at each other and said, we are both at crossroads in our careers. I think we need to try to see if this can work out. And that was also something that I don't think Richard was ready for as well. He got talked into it by his grandson in Austin Dillon, which he needed to get somebody, because if you want Austin Dillon to carry your ride, well, the only thing he's going to carry is a very large paycheck of cars and bent up, sheet metal at the end of the year, 10 plus DNFs. So I think this is also a huge win for RCR. This could have been a catastrophic move, to no offense, where they would have had to resort to somebody like a Daniel Hemrick, a Cole Custer, somebody of that nature. And a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity came to where the best driver since Dale Earnhardt got to race for RCR. Yes, that is including Kevin Harvick. Kyle Busch is a better driver than Kevin Harvick on every measurable statistic. It's not a shot at Kevin Harvick. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, I think that overall, one season in, this has been a happy marriage and a successful season for both Richard Childress Racing and for Kyle Busch. But things have to improve. The DNFs can no longer happen at the rate that they're happening by both the 3 and the 8 car. They got to be able to support each other on the track and not find themselves being off the track at the rate that they are right now. The short track package for RCR has to improve. Kyle Busch should not be getting lapped under green flag conditions at Martinsville and Bristol. He dominates Bristol. Bristol would have to name a grandstand after Kyle Busch with all the accomplishments he has there, let alone not even having a chance to compete for a win, which if he was, he probably wouldn't be out of the playoffs right now. Even though that was the last round, he definitely would be much better on these short tracks than what he has been. And we'd be looking at another 1, possibly 2 wins this year. And just overall consistency out of RCR in general. Kyle Busch has got to do a better job not making penalties on pit road and not wrecking race cars before we get to Sunday. Both of those things have to happen. I feel like Richard Childress has been rejuvenated with Kyle Busch. I think Kyle Busch has been rejuvenated going to a new team. I do want to see a little bit of the old Kyle Busch back. Grandpa Busch is great, for all these other fans that never liked Kyle Busch before. I want to see Kyle Busch be the best of the best. Dale Earnhardt, late in his career, was still rattling cages. I need to see some cages rattled by Kyle Busch selfishly because I want to see a third championship. And sometimes you got to be a prick to be successful in this sport. Look at the guys at the top of it right now outside of William Byron. They push and move the needle. Kyle Busch got to do a little bit more than that this year, the next year, excuse me. But overall, year one with RCR, both Kyle Busch and RCR, I think we'll look back on this and said this is a great foundation. Now it's time to put a championship on this foundation. Can they do that? That's a big question. I'm not sure. I would love to say yes. I think both are capable, but are both able. At Kyle Busch's age, Richard Childress's age, it's going to take a lot. Kyle Busch sold his truck team to focus more on what he's got now in his life. RCR now needs to look at his team and focus more on what it takes to win another championship in this millennial. Are they capable of doing that? I guess as Kyle Busch fans and now new Chevy bow tie Kyle Busch fans, we'll have to wait and see. So that's going to do it for this. Let's talk about it. Let me know what you think. More importantly, if you want to help out this channel and talk to other types of NASCAR fans like yourself or Rowdy Busch fans like yourself and myself, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Again, I'll put that other video in at the very end of this as well. We have live streams where we talk weekly. We also break down each race afterwards and try to do that live as well. We got a new host on the show and Travis Sputt that's been doing great, and also looking at possibly bringing some other people on as well, some familiar faces. So again, thank you all, and hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless.